The company Solar States is teaming up with the Philadelphia School District to help prepare students for careers using solar energy.
Solar States flipped the switch of the largest solar panel array in Philadelphia.
Welcome back to another episode of Yo, Son! Welcome back to another episode of Yo, Son! I'm your host, Micah Goldmarkel, here with
Jared Pashko. And today on the show, we have Maria Kingery, who's representing Southern Energy Management and 360 Impact. Welcome to the show, Maria.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's really an honor and a privilege to have you on with us today, Maria. I mean, wow. I mean, you've been in this industry for how many years now?
Oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed.
Uh-oh. Is that a bad question to start with?
You never ask a woman her age.
It's okay. I believe the accurate number, we started in 2001 officially. So
wow.
3 years.
Wow. That's awesome. I mean, that in the solar industry is like, that's like great grandfather, great grandmother, great everything, great. I mean, that's like, wow, that's really that's been in the industry for a while. I mean, how did you come to the solar industry?
Well, that's a great question. Kind of by accident, but really mostly by passion. So my husband and I both had the chance to work for a company called Burt's Bees that was here local, and we saw like business as we like to say, with our fellow B Corps, using business as a force for good. So we sort of saw that model, and we wanted to be, all four of our parents are entrepreneurs. So we wanted to have our own company, and Bob had taken a solar class and worked for a solar company, that was in business from way back in college. And so we started to give it a go.
Now, where are you guys located again?
We're in Raleigh, North Carolina.
All right.
And
shout out all my Raleigh heads. I love Raleigh. It's a beautiful town.
Cool. Yeah, we serve all across North Carolina, parts of South Carolina, and Virginia.
Very nice. Very nice.
Micah, you were just down there, right?
I was just down there for the NABCEP conference. Shout out to our friends at NABCEP. And also, Maria and Bob were so kind to host a little after NABCEP party. And I got to tour the warehouse at Southern Energy Management. And for anybody who's out there who's into logistics and warehouses, woo, let me tell you, that Southern Energy Management warehouse was clean. That thing was real clean. I was like, man, they are organized. They got this thing going on.
Gosh. I can't wait to share this with our warehouse people. They will be so excited. In fact, they want to maybe the last one here on this Friday afternoon.
Oh yeah, the warehouse person is always like, the last one out. They gotta lock the door and see it for the weekend. That's it.
That's right.
Hey Maria, did you go? You were there for the Amicus retreat where they had the labyrinth. That blew my mind.
The labyrinth.
Yeah. Did you see the labyrinth? Or the maze, the solar panel palette maze? What? Yes. I mean, I don't even know. Am I describing that the right way?
It was. That was really cool. I did not.
It was like a corn maze, but like made of solar panels, stacks and stacks of solar panels.
I didn't go in because, I'd had a couple cocktails that were, and I was afraid I might not make it out.
The rule number one, don't go into a solar panel maze with a couple cocktails already in your system, right?
Well, I mean, it could be really fun, but it also could be
really fun. We'd be like, we had booked a podcast with Maria. She never showed up. She never came out of the maze. Oh, no.
Still wandering around. I'd have gotten thirsty again, probably.
Right. That's how you would find your way out.
Right. I'd never seen anything like this. For our listeners, which Amicus member were we at again? Do you remember the name? It was Is it Sun Valley Solar?
Yeah, we were at Russ's place. Sun Valley. Yeah.
Sun Valley Solar. And in the parking area behind their building, they had stacks of solar panel pallets, and they had stacked them too high so they were above your head. And they had made a maze out of the stacks of solar panel pallets. It was incredible. It was so cool to be able to walk in there, and it was really a maze. It was like you had to figure your way in and out. What an idea!
It was so creative.
So clever, so creative. I was really
Just
impressed.
to show us how much space he had in his lot, to
Yeah, I know, right? He was flexing on us, really.
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you guys, I was a little concerned about his inventory management because he had a lot of panels
He
there.
had a lot of
Yeah.
panels. You got to have a lot of panels to make a maze out of your pallets of solar panels. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot of panels. But let's we'll steer the conversation from away from the maze, and we won't get lost in the maze, so to speak. There it is, corny dad joke. So Maria, you've been in the industry many years now. How have you seen it evolve over this time? What has been some of the most interesting, shocking, amazing um, things that have happened that you've seen over your years in the industry?
Oh my gosh, my God. There's a lot. I found a bag yesterday in my closet, something I've anyway, it said Solar Power International 2008.
Oh,
Yeah, and it had Trina Solar, was the big sponsor. And I mean, 2008, there were like utility scale solar did not exist. Like there was barely, any commercial rooftop solar. Like it was really, and I remember being there, and there were maybe, I don't know, we all fit in a small auditorium. It was like maybe 1,000 people. And then it was either between 2007 and 2008, or maybe it was a year, but anyway, in that time frame, the thing exploded, right? And the next year, Solar City had come on the scene, and their marketing stuff was splashed all over the place, and we were having they were hosting these huge block parties. And so it seemed like sort of overnight the industry kind of exploded. And then there were some lean years after that for the solar industry. And I've tried to ban the word solar coaster from my vocabulary.
I know, right? I was just gonna say it. And then I was like, nope, don't say it. Don't
Don't
go
say
there.
it. I mean, but it is an apt description, right? Because of the policy changes and the way it goes up and down.
Wait, let's get into this because I think some of our listeners are homeowners, just people looking to get info about solar. In the industry, we got this term solar coaster. I mean,
Yeah.
how would you describe that?
Well, again, I mean, being in the industry since 2001, we've seen a number of ups and downs, right? And some of them are policy related, and it can be, we're also affected by economic factors, like any other.
Inventory, like manufacturers coming in and out, prices changing.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's just so much variability in a nascent industry that's not well established, and particularly in the beginning, there were the swings were wild, right? It's really it's evened out quite a bit now, but depending where you are, I mean, we saw what happened in California last year, right? Depending where you are, and we're still really, I would say, what's the word I'm looking for? Affected. I'll just use the word affected. I was coming out, there was a much more negative word coming to my mind. I say we're much more affected by policy swings, and one move from a utility or a state policy can change a whole industry overnight.
Yeah. Or even like a small change in the National Electric Code or,
Yeah.
Things like that can really
Oh,
change a
great
whole
point,
bunch.
Jared. Great point. I mean, you've seen this technology really evolve over time. I'm sure you folks are a lot like us, where you see residential clients looking into batteries like a lot more.
Oh yeah.
Are there some technology changes that just surprised you or caught you off guard?
I mean, so I consider, like, I'm a futurist really at my heart. So the surprise that I have is that it's taken us this long to get to
That's
batteries. And like, 10 years ago when I was saying, and again, and I say that other people were saying it too, but it was just intuitive to me that our homes, our cars, and solar and storage, that was all going to become integrated. And people would look at me like I was nuts. You're crazy. Those of us who were saying this is how it's going to go. And of
Yeah.
course, now it's here. I heard a stat, I think, I don't believe I'm exaggerating, that in the last, so again, talk about policy, like, and how utility incentives and things like that can affect our business. Uh, something like 75%, because our utility has an incentive for storage, batteries plus solar. Something like 75% of our customers are buying batteries now.
wow.
Yeah.
That's a big attachment rate. I mean,
Yeah.
holy smokes.
Yeah. And it happened really quickly, right?
Well,
So,
let's dive into this though, because what is the utility incentive? Is that because they're using it as a virtual power plant or?
so Jared, you just went like over my, like, if my team here, they could answer all these questions. Here's the extent that I know. I know that there's something called power pair, that
Right.
the utility is incenting. And I'm not sure like what it probably does have something to do with load management. I mean, that intuitively makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't want to say for certain that's what
Yeah.
I could make something up, but I'd
It's all
rather.
right. We won't hold you to it, but
I make things up all the time. That's why I have a podcast. I'm sorry.
yeah, we're
So
we're creating facts here, you know?
right.
But I mean, basically, the point being, like, again, you talk about the changes and the surprises. I mean, those two things, and even as recent as like a couple of years ago, our sales team was saying people aren't going to pay for batteries, right?
Right.
They're just not going to pay. And then, like we've seen many times, the people who could afford it and wanted the energy security, they were paying it at any price, right? And
Yeah.
they didn't care. They some people just have the ability to do that, right? Not
That's right.
many. It wasn't a
Yeah.
market.
Right.
But now, when the utility lines up the right incentives to make it possible for more people, then it's really, those things
That's
shape our market.
that's great. That's great. Let's circle back for a second to the B Corp thing. Shout out to all my B Corp brothers and sisters out there. Um, I can talk about our evolution as a B Corp and sort of it was a bit of a shaky start. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. How did you come to the idea that you were going to be a certified B Corp? Was that like right out of the gate, we're going to get certified, or was that something over time you were like, okay, we're here? I mean, you might have been around before B Corp for,
Yeah, I was going to
yeah, yeah.
say it didn't exist, right? There was no such thing. As I mentioned, we learned from Roxanne Quimby, really, at Burt's Bees, like, the power of aligning your business with your values. And so that was sort of how we were oriented, right? It's why we went into a business where we could improve the way people make and use energy. And then we also had, sustainable, wanted to add the people component, right? The triple bottom line just made sense to us. But in those early days, there wasn't a way for us to know. There wasn't a best practice community sharing. And literally, I was just speaking with a former team member who was with us when this happened. I was literally chased down by now a dear friend of mine, Eric Henry, at a Net Impact conference, who was like, "You're Maria Kingery. You're Maria Kingery. You got to become a B Corp." And I was like, "Who is this lunatic? And what is a B Corp?" I had no idea. But as soon as he started telling me about it, I was in. And so it
And now
just,
you're friends.
and now he's one of my dearest
Right,
friends.
right.
Oh, that's great. That's
Greatly.
great. That's great. I mean, I'll tell you my experience early on. I mean, very much mission-oriented business, like sort of same motivations that you just spoke about. We decided to certify, and then I was kind of like, well, like I'm paying whatever X dollars a year.
Yeah.
Great. I'm certified now. Like somebody else is telling me what I already know. And like, what's the value here? And a couple of years went by, and it honestly didn't make much of a difference. And I was thinking of dropping it, to be honest. I was like, we were struggling too financially, and it was like, all right, we got to cut back. Like, what are we going to cut back? Like, what has this B Corp thing done for us? And then we ended up winning a really transformative bid. This thing called Solarize Greater Media, and Media is a town in Pennsylvania. And one of the deciding factors when we asked them, when we said, hey, great, thank you so much for selecting us. And there was an installer literally in Media's backyard that they didn't select. We're in Philly, which is very close to Media, but not in Media.
Uh-huh.
And we said, what was the deciding factor? And they said, you being a certified B Corp was really a big thing. And I was like, wow, now there's value on what it is. I wish more people knew what B Corps were, but have you found any sort of value? Have you had an experience where being a B Corp helped to really either retain talent or gain talent or even contracts or anything of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm not so sure, like on the contract side, probably some of the RFPs that we responded to with like-minded, purpose-driven organizations, I think. But most of our commercial customers really still, they just want a quality product at a good price. It does resonate with many of our homeowners. However, we have had homeowners say, we chose you guys because you're a certified B Corp. And I mean, even like back in 2011, 12, when we were first became a B Corp, we were one of the first 250 B Corps in the world. And back then,
Look at that. That's
Yeah.
cool.
oh my God, surprised
I
me.
want that.
I don't know how to turn it off.
For our listeners on the video screen, Maria was just throwing her hands around, and like things started just popping up. I think this is some AI stuff.
Micah, don't you have that?
I used to have it. I don't know if I still do, or I don't know. Anyhow, continue on, Maria.
Okay, now I've lost where I was.
We lost it.
Well, I want to pick up here because
B Corp. I think we were talking about B
there's
Corp,
something
right?
really interesting about B Corps that I feel like gets lost in the sauce. Is there's so many seals and stamps on so many products these days, and I just wish there was a way for us to scream from the mountaintops the actual burden and reaccreditation and how diligent and how deep it goes to stay accredited. It feels like a much more significant stamp of approval than people really give it credit for or know how valuable it is to really doing some solid due diligence on businesses.
Yeah. And Jared, one of the things, so we are third-party verifiers for energy efficiency programs. So we do a lot of green building work as well as our solar work. And so to me, like, we are telling people every day, well, you should verify that you're actually getting the energy savings that you say you want to get. And so for us to be verified by a third party, and it is becoming much more arduous process. In the beginning, it was basically a checklist, and you got on the phone with somebody, and they would do audits. They would come and visit, and it wasn't nothing, right? They would interview your people and make sure you were telling the truth and stuff like that. But now, I mean, the documentation that is required, the forethought, and we have a team of people in our company and we've done this very intentionally. We call it our B squad. And there are people from each area of the organization. So we have 6 different business units and then our core services team. So we make sure that all the teams are represented, and we get together and we talk about how do we improve. And part of the work is how do we improve our B impact score.
Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so as an engagement tool, you were asking earlier, like, how has it made a difference?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're having conversations that are not happening at most companies, right? At that level, right? Including and it's not the leaders, not just the leaders, right? It's people from field to all levels and all parts of the company that are coming together and advocating for how we, allocate our donation money, what are our community partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
And there's tremendous, and people love that. I mean,
absolutely
the type of people that we want to attract,
it makes work somewhere that's more than just doing work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I got to say, well, before I talk about some of the things I remember about visiting your office, can you give our listeners some context, anything you're willing to share in terms of the size of Southern Energy Management and the number of employees, revenue, anything you're willing to share?
Yeah. I mean, I will say we've grown to be, again, now I think we're close to 200 people.
Wow.
And but again, we've got building performance and we've got solar, and
Right.
it's about half and half in terms of people. Solar, because of all the equipment costs, makes up more of the revenue,
Hmm.
but it's about half and half in terms of the people. And we've always believed that these two things just naturally belong together. And
Absolutely.
so we're very excited to continue. We have some clients who are doing net zero homes. We've done a couple of net zero neighborhoods. So again, that's really our passion, is making sure that people are paying attention to both how they make, like with solar, and how they use energy.
That's great.
Now you're really talking about the future. It's you got the solar panels, the energy efficiency home, the electric car, the battery storage,
Yes.
you know.
It's all
And you're
working
doing this
together.
in neighborhoods, right? You get like a microgrid neighborhood.
Why is this taking so long?
I know.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I
politics,
know.
politics, politics.
Uh-huh.
why is this taking so long? It's been obvious to me for decades.
Wow.
This
Wow.
is what we need to
Wow.
do. But
Well,
and it's happening now. And I
yeah,
really believe we're, particularly with the IRA coming down. I mean, my hope is that we're going to see some even more widespread adoption. And
hmm.
yeah,
And
it's
swinging back to your facility, one of the things I loved seeing was the spread you had laid out for your installers and how like you had all this food and like. And here's the thing: we try to do food too, but sometimes it turns into like Dunkin' Donuts, and it's like, oh, it's food, but it's not really good for you. And but
right.
you really were very thoughtful with the spread that you had out for the installers, and then talking with you. You were also really intentional about how to grow people in their positions and their roles in the company. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy there?
I can. Thank you for asking that question. So about the food, well, and this also goes with our philosophy. So basically, we want to empower people to be able to affect their part of the business, whatever their accountabilities are, wherever they or whatever position they're playing. We want them to be able to make decisions about how that looks. So the food, for example, the solar team decides what they want to order, and it's they've got a budget and they get to decide what they want. I mean, they're out in the cold or the heat or whatever, they burn a lot of calories, right? So it's a mutual interest for us to provide them with healthy things to fuel their bodies. But we educate every one of our team members on how our business runs. So they take everyone within their first 2 years is expected to take 6 core classes. And one of them is basically how do we run our business? How do we solve problems together is another one. Like how do we, when issues arise, how do we resolve those together at the team level? We educate them on how to have a difficult conversation. I taught that class earlier this week.
Wow, that's a
That
great one.
that is a good one.
Yeah.
Wow, I gotta take some notes on that one.
And,
Yep.
and we educate them on, Mike, I know you saw a presentation I did on the Cartman drama triangle, and basically and the empowerment dynamic, and being able to choose how we show up with each other. And then there's a couple more and we also provide like well-being classes, and then we do Jedi
That's
courses.
great.
Yeah.
Justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. And yeah, I mean, I did see your presentation on the Cartman drama triangle. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about that and how you learned about it and what it means?
Yeah. I came across this concept when I joined an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, which I'm still a member and I'm a huge fan of. But basically, it was based on this concept that rather than treating people as victims and trying to either play hero to them, which was what many of us try to do, right? When we see somebody struggling, we want to save them. Or, what I see less of in my world is people playing a more bully role. But like that's the triangle, is like victim, hero, bully. And it's like this dynamic that Stephen Cartman was a psychologist, and he noticed like when relationships were not working well, that people were sort of making their way around this triangle. And then there's an inverse of it, which is where we want our people to be, which is the empowerment dynamic. And it's a shift, right? You shift from hero to coach, and you shift from bully to challenger. Like it's not like you just say, oh, it's fine, you do whatever you want to, you don't have to perform or be accountable. But it's like you can challenge, we challenge one another rather than getting pissed off and yelling at each other. Why didn't you get this done? Which in the construction industry, right, there's a lot of that was the tradition.
I was just gonna say that you're full of that.
Yeah. And so we don't tolerate that type of behavior here, right?
Mhm.
Because we recognize that what that does is it creates victim mentality, right? People get the message they're not good enough, they can't do things. Well, we want them to be on the inverse of that triangle, where and the phrase that I like to use is we're powerful co-creators. Like we're co-creating the results that we want to achieve.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And I got to see Maria give a presentation in depth about this at the Amicus retreat. Shout out to all our Amicus solar partners. And it was really fascinating. It was a great presentation. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And since I mentioned them, how did you start to become involved in Amicus?
Oh my gosh. Well,
There was a crazy person at SPI came running like a lunatic.
right.
His name was Stephen Irvine.
So it wasn't, he didn't come running like a lunatic, but I do distinctly remember sitting in a circle under a fountain or something at an SPI. I don't remember which year, but it was Stephen Irvin, Blake Jones, Gary Gerber from Sunlight and Power. Anyway, it was some of the Jeff Greenfield, and a couple other people. At any rate, we were talking about we were all very values aligned, mission aligned, and we're like, how do we make sure the good guys win? Right? How can we be? And now, of course,
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
How do we make sure the good guys win?
Yeah.
Great.
You're great at distilling things. Like earlier, before we started the podcast, you said, I want to try to help solar people do what they do better.
Yeah.
How do we make the good guys win? I mean,
Yeah.
it really is that simple.
Yeah, you really boil it down to the nugget of truth there. It's a wonderful skill.
The solar industry is a tough one because I think that over time there have been, some bad blemishes on the industry from malactors that we have to still overcome those objections and that reputation, even though it isn't associated with us.
It's, I was having this conversation with someone earlier today, like industry, like we have to self-regulate. There's some, if we don't self-regulate, like an industry will implode, right? And there are some bad actors out there who are not being transparent. They're not telling the truth. And they're in it just for the very short term. In our market, we had, the largest solar company in the state and really in the region.
Oh, yeah, I know them. They were terrible.
It was bad, and changed their name when they, were under investigation by several state, attorneys general because they were
Right.
complaints against them. Oh, well, we'll just rebrand.
Right.
and then ended up going bankrupt. And
Yes, and it killed so many people, that bankruptcy. And you know what's crazy? They tried to enter the market here in Pennsylvania and they stole photos of our installations for their marketing. It was all of our installations for their marketing. I couldn't believe it. I was livid.
I mean, and that's, I mean, unfortunately, like that is when people talk about capitalism, that's the kind of thing that they're talking about. They're not
Mhm.
talking about the kind of business that we're doing,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
where we literally are trying to use business as a force for good and doing good things in the world and treating our people well,
Yeah.
and treating our customers well.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, that
Especially with
was
a
fun.
product that lasts so long. I mean, I think it's so important to install it well, to service it well, to kind of have that commitment to a customer 5, 10, 15 years. Like,
yeah. Well, it's actually, I mean, I would never want this to be the case, but we've actually, our service department has gotten a lot of business from trying to help people
Mhm.
who were
oh, yeah.
left,
They're
abandoned.
left.
So I guess that would be my big, shout out for anybody listening to this podcast. If you are considering going solar, first of all, if you're in the Philly area, obviously choose Solar States. And if you're not, look for an amicus member
Mhm.
because we are self-regulating to
Mhm.
and really holding ourselves to a higher standard. Many amicus members are B Corps too.
Yeah.
That's so true. So true. Well, all that talk about food earlier is making me hungry. And I usually ask Jared, I go, Jared, man, so where you've gone? He's given actually some really good Philly-based tips. But I gotta give one actually now to start off. I've got to say that over the years, I've had a number of wonderful meals at my good friend's restaurant, Bistro La Minette, 6th and Bainbridge. It's been so good. We've had a number of company functions there. Delicious classical French food. And I'm a vegetarian, and they still hook me up. It's really, really good. Any recommendations in the Raleigh area, Maria? What should we hit up next time we're down there? I had a couple really good meals down there, actually.
Oh my gosh. There's so many to choose from. I would say if I were in town, if I wanted a really nice dinner, I would go to Ashley Christensen's Death and Taxes. She's a James Beard awarded chef.
Ooh.
It's it's
Ooh.
it's top
What
notch.
kind of food is that?
It's I would say contemporary American. I mean, she does a lot of
Oh,
she's fresh seafood, and she's just very creative um,
ooh, like that.
with her food.
That's great. That's great. So, Jared, now I got to throw it over to you. You've been on a roll recently. What do you got?
Yeah, you know what? I gotta say, this week I'm celebrating Passover, so
Mhm.
I've been eating some matzah pizza this week.
Matzo pizza. Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
goodness.
Get a
I
piece of
never heard
matzah,
of it.
put some red sauce on there, sprinkle it with some cheese, throw it in the toaster oven, and let me tell you,
Man.
I don't know if it's lower carb than a normal piece of pizza, but it's certainly thin crust. So
Oh, that sounds good. And look, not to horn in on your recommendation, but I saw somebody just happened to see they were making these matzah sort of fold over things. Like she softened it in some water
okay.
a
Really?
little bit and then put the cheese and tomato
Whoa.
sauce and different things and then folded over and baked it in the oven.
Like a little matzah pizza empanada.
Oh my gosh. When that thing came out, it looked so good because it was like crispy on the outside. The
Right.
cheese was all
Ooh.
Oh wow.
Well, we're gonna
Maria,
have a podcast tomorrow. I'll tell you how
I
it
know,
goes.
right? Dropping knowledge on us. That's great. Well,
Yeah.
this has been so wonderful talking with you, Maria. This has been another episode of Yo Son. I'm your host, Micah Goldmarkel, here with.
Jared Pashko. Thanks a lot, Maria, for coming. We
Thank you so
appreciate you.
much, Maria.
Thank
Peace
you.
All
out.
right, y'all.
Peace out.
Oh, we got the balloons.